to another edition of Face to Face, coming to you direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. As always, for the Newsfirst team, I am Jaimal Ratnayaka, and tonight my guest is a returning guest on the show. He is a former minister, a current parliamentarian, and also the leader of the Pivituru Hera Urumeya. And currently, at present, he is a member of a brand new political alliance. By now, you should be knowing who I'm talking about. He is Mr. Udaya Gammanpila, Member of Parliament. Very welcome to you, and welcome back on the show.
And thank you for the invitation.
Certainly. So, Mr. Gammanpila, all the rage is on the Sarva Jana Balaya alliance, which is created by you and several other senior politicians, I must say, and also some who were in the business industry, the business field, entrepreneurs who have now entered politics as well. This is something that I don't think many in our country knew was coming, but nonetheless it is here. So let's start off by talking about the Sarva Jana Balaya. What is the Sarva Jana Balaya? What does it entail? What do you envision for Sri Lanka? And most importantly, what will the people of Sri Lanka gain from it?
Why we need a new coalition? Now, very visible, there are three main coalitions. Firstly, government. Their probable presidential candidate is President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Then there is SJB. Their leader Sajith Premadasa has announced his candidacy. Then again NPP, whose candidate is Anurukumara Dissanayake. So there are three main camps, quite visible.
Right.
Then why do we need another one? Why do we need an alternative? There are several reasons. Firstly, Jaimal, although our two main opposition criticize the government for their conduct, for their policies, unfortunately they have not presented an alternative. Now, if you look at NPP's candidate Anurukumara Disanayake's candidacy was announced more than 1 year ago, but for last 1 year they have failed to present a policy document, a strategic program or election manifesto. So you may have found, as a result, you may have found a lot of contradictions in statements made by their leaders. Like in SJB, they do bitterly criticize the government, but they have never presented an alternative. And when we listen to them, more or less, they are going to follow the footsteps. More or less, they follow the very same policy. They say the government is not done properly, or it's entrangled with the corruption, some kind of allegations, but no policy alternative. Here, first thing, instead of criticism, we are here with the alternative proposals. So, although other parties have failed to present a policy document so far, we publish our policy document at the launch itself.
I see.
Right? We presented a 10-fold policy statement, and within a month, in fact, I announced that within a month, we are going to present a strategic plan based on these 10-fold policy. That's the first thing. Secondly, look at these candidates. All these candidates were the leaders of the so-called Yahapalana government. Right? I deliberately use the word so-called. Yahapalana means the good governance, but that government was full of corruption, as you know, from the central bank, bond scam and all that. So, this Ranil Wickremesinghe was the prime minister of that government. Sajith was a key minister, Minister of Housing, Construction, Cultural Affairs and all that. Anurukumara was a leader of the Leadership Council, as well as he was a member of the Anti-Corruption Committee. So, 6.9 million people who voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the last presidential election voted for him to defeat the so-called Yahapalana government. So, true, Gotabaya has crushed our dreams, Gotabaya has betrayed us, all that true. But it doesn't mean we want to embrace back what we want to defeat just 5 years ago. Now, don't forget the fact that both Sajith Premadasa and Anura Kumara were candidates at 2019 presidential election. Nobody is new.
Right.
They were rejected by the people at the 2019 election by choosing Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So, then we do admit that Gotabaya was a disaster, he was a failure, but the people 6.9 million people who voted for Gotabaya has no alternative. All three candidates are from the enemy camp. So we are here to present a presidential candidate who is ready to meet the aspiration of those 6.9 million people.
Right.
Or unfulfilled dreams. We are here to stand for their unfulfilled aspirations.
Right. So you made a very interesting point. You said that everyone who have currently announced that they will be running for presidency are from the enemy camp. But at the same time, you, who was a supporter of the SLPP government led by Gotabaya Rajapaksa, is now broken away from it, and you oppose the SLPP altogether. Is that correct?
Of course, yes.
Right.
If you closely follow the politics during the last 2.5 years, we were the bitter critic of SLPP government.
Okay, so what led me to ask that question, Mr. Gammanpila, is we know in politics, not just Sri Lankan politics as a whole, across the board, there are no permanent enemies or friends. People you think will not even sit at a table together have run countries. And we saw that during the 2018 constitutional crisis. And so many other instances as well. So
the classic example is in 2022, the recent one.
Yes, that
Ranil
too.
Wickremesinghe became the leader of his opponent camp.
Exactly. So against all those instances and scenarios historically, what's to say that the Sarvajana Balaya, assuming it does come to power through the presidential candidate you field, does not join an alliance with either of these enemy camps, either Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, President Ranil Wickremesinghe's camp, or the SLPP in the future? We do not know. So what guarantee does the people have that the Sarvajana Balaya will not take the side of either the UNP, SJB, NPP camp or the SLPP camp in the future?
Jamal, if you want to do that, you would have done it by now, because we have open invitation from these two camps.
Right.
We don't join because they are not alternative forces. They have not, in order to solve this crisis, firstly they should correctly identify the cause. Unless we identify the root cause, we are treating the wrong causes.
Right.
That you never can eliminate the problem or solve the problem. Therefore, we believe in a national economy based on our resources, our people, and our heritage. Those are the
key areas.
Key areas of that's the center or the base foundation of our building of national economy. Unfortunately, even 2.5 years after the crisis, none of these parties have identified that lack of local production is the root cause of all these problems. Now, as you know, we have around $10 billion gap between export income and import expenditure. The present government, every successive government since 1977, instead of trying to have a government-supported local industries, they encourage imports, and we borrowed from other countries to finance our imports.
Yes.
Then we didn't have any mean to pay back those loans. Then we further borrow money to pay back the loans already borrowed.
Yes.
So that's why we are now in a debt crisis, in addition to our balance of payment crisis and fiscal crisis.
Right.
Then solution is local production. India in 1991 faced the very same problem. Then India had a buy Indian, be Indian campaign.
Right.
Have you heard something like that from Sri Lankan politicians? I mean, from the government politicians? We have been preaching this. Grow whatever you can grow. Produce whatever you can produce locally. Buy Sri Lankan and be Sri Lankan. Nothing that sort of from the government.
Yes.
It means they have not identified the root cause of the problem. So whatever they talk, they can't solve this problem because they don't know the root cause.
Right. So, since the Aragalaya and since the downfall of the Rajapaksa government, Gotabaya Rajapaksa government, there have been many coalitions that came up. I'm talking about coalitions mainly today because the Sarvajana Balaya is the latest coalition to come up, and Pivaturu Hello Urume, led by you, has been part of many coalitions, even the Uttara Lanka Sabhage, if I'm not mistaken, and also the coalition that you created with the SLFP, the one with the helicopter.
Yes.
Was that also an attempt at garnering the support of the people? But we must reach out to that particular aspect also, Mr. Gammanpila, because the SLFP is currently embroiled in a lot of controversy, especially regarding its leadership and the court orders that have been delivered against its chairman, Maithripala Sirisena. So, is there a move for the Sarvajana Balaya to move towards more political parties, include them in your alliance, and increase, essentially broaden your base? Because at the end of the day, you need votes to get into parliament or even to ascend to presidency. So the best way to do that is to establish a broad coalition that has a good voter base. So what is the next step for the Sarvajana Balaya?
Well, we are talking a lot of parties and a lot of parliamentarians on individual basis, and we formed this coalition because we found around 24%. A very recent opinion poll took place in early May, indicates that around 24% of the voters are yet to choose a party to vote.
I see.
They have discussed it with every single party available, and almost everybody in that 24% have voted Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the last
2019 presidential election.
So what we found is that, Jayamal, after the debacle took place in 2022, majority of SLPP supporters left the party.
Right.
And some of them have already joined the JVP. That process has been taking place for last 2.5 years. Now the one, if they want to go to JVP, they have already gone by now. Because 2.5 years is a long period.
Yes.
In Australia, they hold election every 3 years. So 2.5 years is almost government term. Then some have joined the SJB, some have gone back to the SLPP or UNP. Then these 24% of the voters
have
are the one who have already rejected the government, the SJB, as well as the NPP. So they are really
out of options.
Desperately looking for an alternative, a new one, fresh one, based on values they believe, what they try to achieve through Gotabaya Rajapaksa. That's why we, as you said, in a very short period of time, we discussed after seeing this, we saw this report in second week of May, then we began to discuss who were able to reach consensus, we formed the coalition. And we came out to give a signal to those people, don't be disappointed, don't say that we are not going to vote, we are here for you. But on the other hand, Jayamal, there are several political parties who were not, they have been discussing with us, but they failed to reach consensus by the time we launch the new coalition. It doesn't mean that we are going to shut the door.
Okay.
So the discussions are going ahead. So we will we can't repeat our mistakes. So we have to be very careful in selecting people. So whoever present our agreement is that if all existing members are in agreement to accept another political party or a parliamentarian, then only we can take that person in or that party in. Otherwise, no. If even a single party says no, that party will not be accommodated in our new coalition. So we are talking to a lot of people. Now let's come to a very important question with regard to the SLFP. SLFP was the traditional nationalist party in this country. What happened, like us, in April 2022, SLFP officially left the government and sat in the opposition benches. Thereafter, some of them, there were 14 members, I think 11 out of 14, joined back the government with different ministerial portfolios and other perks. So there was only 4 left in the opposition. Then after Easter Sunday, after the Supreme Court judgment on Easter Sunday attack, who was in which President Sirasa made one of the main culprits for the Easter Sunday attack, President Sirasa also began to tilt towards the government.
Okay.
Then there was only 3 MPs in the opposition, and meanwhile, so SLFP was mainly 2 groups, government SLFP as well as the opposition SLFP.
Okay.
But although parliamentarians had different perks and they decided to join the government, the majority of the SLFPs they left the government with their leaders in April 2022, but they never joined back the government along with their leaders. But they had a place to be because their leaders, Maithripala Sirisena, was in the opposition, their secretary, Dayasiri Jayasekara, was in the opposition, so they had a place. But after President Sirisena began to tilt towards the government, SLFP, both camps are now part of the government to support the government. One group is led by Cabinet Minister Nimal Siripala de Silva, the other group is led by Cabinet Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa. So both camps of the SLP, both fractions of the SLFP are now led by 2 cabinet ministers.
Right.
But the 90% of SLFP supporters are anti-government.
Right.
So that's the mood of the country prevailing right now.
Right. Okay.
Right now, SLFP grassroots leaders, electoral organizers say, our leaders have abandoned us. They have put us in a big trouble because they have joined the government, but we can't. If we do that, we can't survive in our villages. So we have decided to talk to them and get them admitted to our coalition.
All right. So, Mr. Gammanpila, a common ideology that you and your colleagues share, more particularly Mr. Vimal Weerawansa and others, is the ideology of nationalism. And this is something that former President Mahinda Rajapaksa has also been very vocal about. And we know that he is still the leader of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. So, given your past alliances, given the parallels or the similarities that you and the SLPP's Mahinda Rajapaksa and all of them have, can you give the people an assurance that you or Mr. Vimal Weerawansa or the Sarvajana Balaya will never align itself with the SLPP? Let's take the SJB NPP out of the equation because you have not worked with them in the past. But you used to be staunch supporters of the Rajapaksas, the Rajapaksa government and the SLPP. Can you give the people an assurance that such a relationship will never be forged?
Of course, yes. Firstly, now we should prove it not by words but by deeds.
Certainly.
Jamal, as you correctly said, we have been associating with Rajapaksas and we were the forerunners in forming the SLPP government, but unfortunately Rajapaksas badly let us down by promising something and doing something else. Then we are the ones, Vimal, Udaya and Vasu were the only ones in the cabinet who resisted that, who opposed that. And the first cabinet meeting of the present government took place August, I think 12th August 2020. At the very first cabinet meeting, they presented the 20th Amendment. Right? It was so everybody was in a very celebrative mood because first cabinet meeting we had Kaum, milk rice and everything.
Majority.
So very jubilant. And as you said, President was very powerful. He had 2/3 majority in parliament, 6.9 million people's mandate as the president, but not the opposition, but we led the campaign against 20th Amendment. Secondly, he has promised in his election manifesto to develop the eastern terminal of Colombo port with government funds through the port authority, and to have a joint venture for the western terminal.
Right.
But he tried to do vice versa, other way around. We are the one, not anybody else, not from the opposition. Cabinet ministers, being cabinet ministers, we are the one who oppose, because election manifesto is the contract between the president and the people. So he can't grossly violate what he promised without having a reasonable reason, justifiable reason. Then we promised good governance, criticizing bond scam and all that. There was a tender, open tender for selecting a supplier for LNG, gas for our power stations.
Right.
A Chinese company was able to secure the contract. Basil Rajapaksa, being an American, brought an American company called Newsfirst Energy, which has not participated in that tender, ignoring the entire tender procedure. He brought a cabinet paper to give that contract to Newsfirst Energy, which company has never participated in this tender procedure. Not the opposition. We cabinet ministers who opposed the cabinet, and first time in the entire world history, 3 cabinet ministers went to the Supreme Court against its own cabinet.
Right.
So we have been fighting Rajapaksas. Rajapaksas badly let us down, firstly. Secondly, we have been fighting Rajapaksas more than the present opposition. Thirdly, during the last 2.5 years, they tried their best to take us back. Once they realize they can't take us back, then they started to sling mud at us. Level unfounded,
baseless accusations.
Baseless allegations, yes. If you read Gotabaya Rajapaksa's recent book, it's full of lies against us. Why? They know very well 2 things. Firstly, we will never join them back. Secondly, they don't want us to come back because we are not ready to just allow them to do whatever they wishes.
You are not yes men.
We are not yes men. We resist to any wrongdoing, right? Their ulterior motive is to earn some buck, just talking about patriotism and taking votes, and in the end, if they are going to do corrupt deals, the last thing what they want is having us in that government. Because through their experience, they know that we are the first one to resist that kind of actions.
Right.
So I think those deeds, not words, I can even give an affidavit saying we will not join. There is a government minister in 2019, he gave an affidavit stating he will never join Rajapaksas, but he is now a cabinet minister. So affidavits are not that important. Words are not worthy in this political world.
Playground.
But assess us on our deeds, on the merit of our deeds. We have acted honorably. True that we should have thought in traditional manner. Politicians think this government was brought by us. We work very hard to bring this government. So we should ignore the wrongdoings of the government kind of an attitude. Is the traditional standard attitude of any politician. But we didn't do that. Even previously, when Mahinda Rajapaksa's government from 2005 to 2015, we were very critical whenever he was doing something wrong. Even being a provincial minister, I have participated in anti-government
rallies,
protests, along with journalists, when Mervyn Silva went and attacked Rupavahini journalists. So we have acted very independently. We have, in Buddhism it says yatakari tatavadi, tatakari yatavadi. We always, we have said what we do and we do what we say. So people can rely on us.
Udaya Gammanpila's conscience is clear. He always puts his money where his mouth is, and he is true to his convictions. Very strong statements from the parliamentarian. However, we must cross over for a short commercial break. Stay tuned to Face to Face. We will be right back.
Newsfirst, Face to Face with Jamal Ratnayaka. Heavy Band at St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia present Kailasa 2024, an unforgettable night that celebrates the rich heritage of Sri Lanka. On the 1st June in front of the college library at 6:30 p.m, tickets can be purchased at the college office. Media sponsor, TV1 Sirasa TV. Calling all art lovers. Discover the legacy of Jayantha Premachandra at the J.D.A. Pereira Gallery from May 29th to June 4th, marking 40 years since his last Colombo exhibition in 1982. Don't miss this stunning retrospective and book sale. Media sponsor, TV1 Newsfirst.
Every Saturday and Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Tune in to Shakti TV.
We live in a world of progress. But what if progress isn't reaching everyone? Millions of Sri Lankans struggle without access to clean water, safe roads and bridges to a better life. But you have reached out. You have touched their lives. Thank you, Sri Lanka, for making Gammadda the most impactful rural development movement in our nation. Gammadda, for the people, by the people.
Newsfirst, face to face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
Welcome back to Face to Face. My guest tonight is former Minister and Member of Parliament Udaya Gammanpila, leader of the Pivithuru Hela Urumaya. Mr. Gammanpila, let's get to another talking point that has been in the headlines for quite some time now, and it shouldn't be really, because it's enshrined in the Constitution, and if Sri Lanka's administrators do follow the Constitution, it will happen according to the Constitution. You know, I'm talking about the presidential election, and it is set and scheduled to be held this year. Firstly, let me just gauge on how you believe that there are so many factions expressing various opinions about the presidential election. Because we saw Udaya Gammanpila, who is not a political figure, he is only a former ambassador, comes down and says that he will be 100% sure that it will not be a presidential election but a general election that will be held. And more recently, a couple of days ago, Palitharanga Bandar of the UNP has said that they propose the delaying of the presidential and general election for 2 years so that Sri Lanka's economy can get back on track. So what are these whimsical statements that are being made, Mr. Gammanpila, that the people are now being led astray and they feel disillusioned because they do not know what the future holds for them? We are just not even come out of bankruptcy. We are merely on very unstable ground. And all the people want is to give a fresh mandate to a new set of people who will take Sri Lanka out of this rut. But the people in power, or those who have airtime on media, are saying very confusing things. What is your opinion of this?
My alma mater's motto was country before self.
Right.
Unfortunately, majority of politicians motto is self before country. So now look at Udaya Gammanpila's statement. You firstly mentioned that. So he won parliamentary election before the presidential election because he is supporting the SLPP. It is the best interest of SLPP. Now, it is very obvious that the government will face a humiliating defeat at the presidential election.
Right.
If that is the case, the subsequent parliamentary election, most probably it will happen within 3 months of the presidential election. So, government will have two challenges. Firstly, Now they have shown the people that they will win. You may have seen government MPs always come before cameras and say we are as strong as we used to be, and we will be the winners, and others are just making an artificial trend in social media, that kind of things. And some followers, supporters genuinely believe what the MPs say, and genuinely, honestly, they believe that SLPP will win the next election. Right? But if presidential election precedes the parliamentary election, by the time of the parliamentary election, they know the reality. They get demoralized. As a result, they would not support the party at the election. Then they can't get less number of seats. Secondly, so if presidential parliamentary election precedes the parliamentary election, then with that perception, they will go and they will actively support the party. They will go and vote for the party. They know the true position of the party only after the election. That happened to UNP at the last election. I can remember UMPs used to argue with me that they will get 3 seats from Colombo, 3 seats, but in the end they couldn't get a single seat from entire country. Likewise, secondly, in Sri Lankan system, whatever the law says, the party in power abused the state machinery in favor of them at the elections. Police, grassroots level government officers, they used them to support their campaigns. But if presidential election precedes the parliamentary election, SLPP MPs know they can't use the state machinery for their favor at the parliamentary election. Those are the 2 reasons they tried their best to convince president to hold the presidential election, parliamentary election before the presidential election. But Jamal, if you follow me, every single my speeches, media briefings are available in my social media, YouTube, Facebook, whatnot. Since last September, I firmly said presidential election will take place first. Not that I am an astrologist, not that I am a close friend of the president. That is more rational, and that is the best for the country. That is best for the president. So president sometimes may not think what is the best for the country. At least he would think what is the best for himself. So I logically analyze and explain. I have been explaining since last September that with 100% confidence level that presidential election would precede the parliamentary election. So Dilan Pereira and Udaya Gammanpila's statements are baseless because it's illogical, irrational. Now let's come to more serious statement made by Lanka Bandar. He said he proposed to postpone both presidential and parliamentary election by 2 years by holding a referendum. I noted that several politicians said it's not constitutionally feasible, but it's possible. Article 83 give the power to the government to postpone elections by after obtaining. In order to postpone election, there are 2 hurdles. Firstly, that proposal should be approved by the parliament with 2/3 majority. So it's a very difficult hurdle. Secondly, it should be approved by the people at a referendum. Right? Now, so legally possible. What Lanka Bandar proposed is legally possible. Now let's see whether it's politically feasible. Now we know this government has not shown 2/3 majority. Present government, I mean under President Wickramasinghe's leadership, it has never shown the 2/3 majority in parliament. And there is no reason for the opposition to support that kind of a proposal because presidential election will be won by one of opposition party. Every single political party in opposition will get their number of parliamentary seats increased at the parliamentary election. So there is no reason for any opposition political party to support this proposal to form the 2/3 majority in parliament in favor of the proposal. So first hurdle is out. Secondly, now if they hold the presidential election and if they win the election,
Yes.
present president will get a term of 5 years.
5 years.
Why do they ask them just 2 years? Because they are fully confident that
They will
would
not
not win
be
the election.
securing power at the
Actually,
next election.
I am thankful to Paltarange Bandara
Right.
for being humble enough to admit the fact that government can't win the presidential election.
To understand reality.
That's his statement reflects the fact that government can't win the presidential election.
Right.
If they can win for 5 years, there is no reason
For
to
them
ask
to
for
extend for
just
2
2
years.
years.
Right.
Then, but if they can't at the presidential election, you don't need 50% to be the president.
Right. Yes.
If you are the candidate with highest number of votes, irrespective of your percentage, maybe 30%, 35%, 40%, you will still be the
Winner.
president. At a referendum, you must obtain the 50%,
The highest number of counts. Yes.
50% of the valid votes to win the referendum. If you can't, you are proposing this since you can't win the presidential election. If you can't get just 35%, how can you get the 50%? So practically impossible. Thirdly, at a presidential election, all candidates are competing
Against each other. Yes.
So even government candidate have an advantage because NPP candidate, when he attacks the government candidate, he attacks the SJB candidate and Sarva Janabala candidate and every other candidate.
Right.
But at a referendum, government is at one side, everybody else will be at other side. Then government will have to face the opposition, has to face a united opposition. Because of these three reasons, presidential election is more favorable to the government than holding a referendum. Unfortunately, UNP General Secretary demonstrated lack of political insight by making that statement.
It's a very comprehensive explanation, but do you believe that the UNP's General Secretary has unwittingly caused himself and his party detriment by making that statement, because now that has caught on like wildfire, and we saw that the US ambassador to Sri Lanka has also visited the election commission, which somewhat came as a surprise to many, because we don't want a foreign envoy visiting a local body or an administrative body in the country when there is a government in power and a fully capable administrative service to do so. What did you make of it? Because you have been critical of the US ambassador or any foreign envoy's unwanted moves in the past. So I want to pick your brain on that matter as well.
When you posed this question, my mind went to 1991. I remember an incident took place in 1991. There was a local authority election. And there was a British High Commissioner called Gladstone. I can't remember his first name. Right? So he decided to walk into a polling booth to observe by himself to ensure that there would be free and fair elections. President Ranasinghe Premadasa, fortunately we had very
strong
leaders with national pride. He got furious after hearing this, so he made him persona non grata.
Right.
So in other words, he asked the British government to, we don't treat him as a diplomat anymore, please get him back. That's how our former presidents acted. You may know in 1966, our Burmese ambassador assassinated his wife at the embassy, and because of Vienna Protocol, our police was not permitted to enter into the embassy. Ambassador's residence. Then Prime Minister Dudley Senanayake ordered police to arrest the ambassador whenever he leaves the country, and his photograph was sent to all ports and seaports and airports.
Right.
Then there was a huge diplomatic issue. Then there was a Burmese delegation came to Sri Lanka, stay here for a week, and convince Sri Lankan government to release him.
Right.
So with the promise that we will apply the law and prosecute him in Myanmar.
In Myanmar, right.
Then But take the present context. I am ashamed to hear that our election commission, right? They are not even answerable to the president. They are only answerable to the people.
Yes.
So it has our constitution has got a lot of great independence to a great extent for them to act independently. That's what we expect from an election commission. Unfortunately, they had discussions with ambassador. If there was a fit and proper president, this is good enough to declare Julie Chang persona non grata and ask US government to recall her. Because of this submissive attitude of our leaders, these ambassadors behave not as ambassadors but as governors in their colonies. Now you may know Elizabeth Host, the ambassador designate
yes.
for Sri Lanka, at the Foreign Relations Senate Committee's meeting which took place to confirm her, responding to a senator's question, she said, we ask, the word she used is ask. I watched that live stream and made a transcript of the entire
conversation,
Q&A session.
Right, okay.
Right? So after that I held a media briefing as well. She deliberately, intentionally used the word ask. We asked Sri Lankan government to impose a ban on Chinese research vessels. Who the hell are they to ask us to do like that? Our foreign policy should be decided by us for our interest. So these ambassadors act like governors in their colonies because of spineless, backboneless leaders in this country. So I think if our government has a backbone, they should at least criticize and condemn the act of Julie Chang. But I never expect this government to do that because I don't believe that they have that kind of a backbone.
So sticking to the topic of relations with other countries, bilateral relations, very important to Sri Lanka, especially in the time of need. A country that stepped forward and helped us immensely was India. And now there is talks of connecting India's grid with Sri Lanka. There's talks of, there's already been a move to introduce UPI to Sri Lanka so that it makes transactions easier to Indian tourists and so on. I want to again ask you what sort of an opinion you have with regards to Sri Lanka's close ties, the sudden close ties we are forging with India, especially after Sri Lanka's economic crisis, and what sort of repercussions or what sort of restrictions in the first place should Sri Lanka have when we are engaging with India to ensure that our sovereignty is still retained, although we do increase the measure or the frequency of cooperation between Sri Lanka and India?
Indian relationship is crucial to Sri Lanka. So India is Sri Lanka's one and only border sharing neighbor. India has so many border sharing neighbors. But in Sri Lankan context, India is the one and only. Therefore, we have to have a very cautious relationship with India, not like those days. India is a rising superpower. Presently, 6th largest economy in the world, and by 2030 it has been forecasted that India will be the 3rd largest economy in the world. Only after China and USA, Indian will be the largest economy. So our relationship, our approaches should be very cautious, and we like it or not, Sri Lanka is just 32 kilometers away from India. But it doesn't mean that despite giant India has been just 32 kilometers away from Sri Lanka, we have been maintaining our sovereignty. We have been maintaining our territorial integrity. If you read Mahavansa, it's all about how India invaded Sri Lanka and how we fought back. So, Jawaharlal Nehru, writing a letter, I can't remember, that was in 1950s, chief ministers of India, he says, India is a giant just few kilometers away from Sri Lanka. Sri Lankans may feel this giant is about to gulf us. Therefore, whatever we do, we should do to get rid of this fear, not to increase this fear. That's why in the past, Indian leaders was very accommodative. When there was a Indian estate laborers issues, Sirima Sastry agreement was signed in our favor.
Right.
Then if you look at the Kachativ island issue,
yes.
I noted present leaders were very critical of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, but she was very accommodative of Sri Lanka
to hand it
because
over
of that Jawaharlal Nehru's philosophy. Whatever we do, we should do to reduce that fear, not to enhance that fear. Then, so when we deal with India, this is not a big brother and small brother kind of younger brother, elder brother attitude.
Yes.
We are equal partners in this international community. Firstly, we should act like equal partners. Secondly, in any transaction, any decision, India always look after their interest. Likewise, Sri Lankan leaders should look after Sri Lankan interest. They also jump into the Indian shoe and think how India feel it, how India affect it. But Sri Lankan should look after Sri Lankan interest. India will never get offended to that because that's our birthright.
Right.
But when you are talking about the connections, now there are air connectivity, maritime connectivity, financial connectivity, those are virtual connectivities. But I have been against the Hanuma Bridge since 2015. I am very proud to say that because of my campaign only, both government decided to give it up of building Hanuma Bridge linking Sri Lanka and India in 2015. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting Sri Lankan Parliament, addressing Sri Lankan Parliament, he announced the construction of the bridge. They secured a huge loan, I think $5.2 billion from ADB to construct the bridge because of our campaign. Since our campaign was very convincing, logical, rational and enriched with facts, we were able to convince the nation, and because of the public resistance, government had to give up. Now they are going to do it again.
Yes.
So in that case, of course, we are vehemently opposing this. Our natural national security measure is being an island. We are surrounded by the sea. No boundary sharing, land territory sharing, neighbors. No, as a result, no disputes in our border. So we are going to lose it forever if we are going to build that kind of a bridge. There is an English saying, Jayamal, don't catch anything what you can't throw away. If you, now, we are just 32 kilometers away from India. If you want to touch India, yes, if you want, you can swim. There's a Sri Lankan, I can't remember his name. There's a Guinness record who swim from Sri Lanka to India.
Okay.
You can swim. There are ferry services. There are planes. So you have a lot of connectivities. But if you have the bridge,
we don't need a physical link.
We don't need, because if we are in trouble on a future day, we can't say no. We should only catch things that we can throw away when necessary. But once we build the road, we are permanently linked to India, then we will lose the advantage of being an island. Therefore, that decision, we were able to defeat that decision, reverse that decision in the past. Definitely, we will do it in the future as well.
Udaya Gammanpila, former minister and member of parliament, was my guest tonight. He is the leader of the Pivituru Heru Urume and also now a member of a brand new coalition named the Sarva Jana Balaya. Thank you very much, Mr. Gammanpila, for joining me, ranging from a variety of topics we discussed: foreign relations, politics, presidential elections, and also the integrity of politicians, how one should act in order to garner the confidence and the love of the people in the process. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have tonight to discuss with Mr. Gammanpila, but nonetheless, I hope that he joins me on the show once more. And that's the way it was on Face to Face tonight. Do take care and have yourselves a great night.